like to reconvene the board meeting at this time and tell you what our recommendation is for a hearing officer. You want to say it?
Madam Chairperson, I move that the Board of Trustees approves the recommendation of Deborah Balmer as a hearing officer for an anticipated contested case hearing.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Is there any discussion here? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you, Ed. That is a resolved issue. I'm sorry, Ed, you could not go into executive session with us. But
Yes, and I voted aye.
I know you did. Thank you so much. Mandy, if you wish, you may leave now. Thank you, Mandy. Good is our advisor, our attorney advisor in this action. So thank you. Moving on, Don Erickson has a report for the WCCC.
Yeah, the Wyoming, thank you, Madam Chair. The Wyoming Community College Commission met in Powell. Dr. Joe and I attended. Trustee Mosier would have been with us, but he had an illness in the family, and so he was excused from being there. This is a meeting that occurs regularly by the Community College Commission. And I've been attending them for the last, well, probably 3 or 4 since I've been on the board. I'd like to give a brief report of what was reviewed. The Commission receives a series of reports from a variety of different groups, such as the Council of Presidents, that's the group of all the presidents of our colleges, also the Community College Faculty Alliance, the Wyoming Association. Others were reporting, and I'm not going to review my notes relative to each of the various reports, but there are some things that I do believe I should make a comment about. One of the reports had to do with the Community College Wyoming, which is Wyoming's task force to implement the Wyoming Community College, Community College America, which is to improve the success rate of our college students throughout America. Our effort here in Wyoming has been addressed by a group that's been appointed by the governor with some additional advisory people. And they're moving along very well with a plan to work on 3 major areas. One is improving advising or access and advising of students. Another is in the area of remediation and the remedial work. And then the other is in improving the performance, so we have a higher success rate. I think that that group is recognizing that they want to have a Wyoming approach to this national effort. I felt that it seems to be coming along very well, and I think maybe Dr. Joe might want to add some additional comments when he gives his president's report. You have a legal-sized piece of paper in front of you, which is entitled Projected 2015-2016 Biennial Budget Allocations to the Colleges. And this is the projected payout to all the colleges for the next biennium. And it's self-explanatory, but right in the middle of the columns there you have all the colleges, and you look down I think it's right in the middle actually, Laramie County Community College, and you'll see how the funds from the state are distributed to us, which as predicted it'll be about $48.5 million, and this could fluctuate depending on some of the scenarios that develop at the state. I found the meeting to be continuing education for me. I'm glad that Trustee Mosier invited me to be active on the Wyoming Community Colleges Association of Trustees, so that I will be attending as many of the college commission meetings as well as the trustee meetings. It's quite informative. I hope that I can share whatever I learn with the rest of you. And if you have any questions about the material that I just distributed to you, I'll ask you to ask him to Dr. Joe, because he can get more specific, particularly when it comes down to the allocation on the $14.3 million. As a newbie on the board, I find that particular discussion that they had to be somewhat complex for me. It wasn't for the rest of them, because it dealt with various formulas, and I frankly am not really up to speed on those formulas yet. But I hope that in the next go around I'll be more up to speed on that. That's my report. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to respond to them.
Good job, Don. I really appreciate you going. Joe? Kevin, do you have a question?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
The spreadsheet here is not as self-explanatory as you suggested. What is the high school students' room and board subsidy? I've never heard of that before. I know it's a small amount, but it's puzzling.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Dr. Kilty, I was going to point out on here, there's actually two line items that are funded for the colleges that are unique. You probably haven't seen them before. One is the high school students' room and board subsidy. That was really intended in a specific legislative appropriation to provide some state assistance for colleges that open up their residence halls for summer camps that engage high school students. I don't know all of the campuses that have programs for high school in the summer. The rising costs that were passed on to the high schools and the students to do that brought some concern to the legislature, and so they appropriated some funds for that. The other one you'll see is this rodeo athletic programs. That was some legislation that was really advanced by the late Representative Sue Wallace out of Gillette, and it was intended to start to stimulate a greater partnership between the college rodeo programs and tourism and travel programs and organizations in the state. Again, it was allocated to the 6 campuses that have rodeo programs, and is really intended to help us with recruitment, promotion of rodeo events, and to work with local tourism organizations to help drive more individuals to college rodeo and college rodeo activities. So those are two unique ones. I can't give you much more guidance on what the direction is of how we'll use it, but I know we've been speaking with folks on campus to figure out the best way for LCCC to leverage those, and hopefully I'll have an update for you when we start going into the budget study sessions. As Trustee Erickson pointed out, there's some interesting aspects within this budget that you'll hear more from me about as we go into the budget study session and then into the subsequent meetings on the budget. This enrollment growth, traditionally we've received some enrollment growth, never complete funding of enrollment growth from the legislature. Enrollment growth is one-time funding for the biennium that reflects increased enrollments at the colleges over the base year of 2004-2005. This is the first time where we've been funded with enrollment growth almost to the entirety of our request. We could have requested more based on the formula. But there is a footnote tied to this that says that the enrollment growth funds will be distributed based on class completions. And so what you see with the commission spreadsheet here is they've looked at the total percent of successful class completion, so passing grades in classes offered by each of them, and essentially looked at the percentage that each campus contributes to the total, and then they're allocating that $14.3 million accordingly. And if you look at it, we have the largest enrollment, and we also have the largest number of successful course completions, and so that looks good for LCCC. There are some questions that were raised on Friday pertaining to the methodology. The biggest concern here, I believe, is that we're looking at class completions, not necessarily at completed student credit hours. So feasibly, a 1-credit class has the exact same weight as a 4-credit class. And, you know, one of the things that Dr. Nolte posed to the commission in a letter was, you know, is that truly comparing apples to apples? Is it possible that 1-credit classes at institutions have a higher pass rate than, say, a 4-credit class? And I think there's some validity to that. It sounds like the commission is willing to examine that down the road, but they went ahead and passed rules that essentially kept that as it is. So there's some course completion, some performance measures in here that we're trying to watch and understand. Sheer numbers, we do well, but if you were to look at percentages, we still have some room to grow. And if we continue to see this shift of the commission to put more and more of the resources into specifically into performance, we've got to start catching up, or we're going to see it impacting our budget more as we move down. So anyways, just a review. I'm happy to answer any questions. You'll certainly hear more about this as we go into the budget development process.
Great. Thank you. Very informative. Next, we have Human Resources Policies and Procedures. Dr. Schaefer will address this.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Hopefully you received an edition of the HR Policies, Procedures, Rules Reference Table, and you should also have copies of all of the procedures that are before you, those with denoted change. I thought what I would do is I would just quickly go through, and Madam Chair, if you're okay with it, I'll go through the changes to the rule, the policies and procedures from when you have seen them last. The procedures are in my domain now. The policies are before you tonight. But there have been some minor changes to the procedures that I think I just want to make you aware of, and also denote any changes to the policy. On the first page, under the rules, one of the things we actually put in there was a clarifying language that basically states that upon the recommendation officer or the findings of the hearing officer, you, the board, will take action to finalize the contested case. It also removes the requirement for the petitioner to share the cost of the hearing officer, but does denote that all parties bear their individual expenses associated with the hearing. Under your policy 6.1, no changes there. Under 6.1.1P as well as 6.1.2P as well as 6.1.3P, you'll see the definition of at-will employee to align with Wyoming case law and as stated in the Wyoming's civil pattern jury instructions. This change came as the subsequent review of attorneys from Hearst Applegate who are trying to give us that external perspective as we've gotten close to these. And so you'll see that change, those three, as well as I think one or two later on. Some clarifying language, formatting changes, so on and so forth. Under 6.1.3, employment, you'll see we added just some clarifying language to the expectations of contract notification. 6.1.4, employee separation. There was question raised through HR and legal review about what we mean by extenuating circumstances for job abandonment and who defines that. So we said HR will determine whether or not there's extenuating circumstances. You have some grayed out areas of the 6.2 and 6.3 policies and procedures. That's because those are out for consultative feedback right now. They will come forward to you at a subsequent meeting. 6.4 employee benefits, no changes there. 6.4P employee benefits. Again, a refinement of the, let me get to the right one here. If I can get here. One of the things that Dr. Fiero actually brought up at our cabinet meeting that I believe was valid feedback, and so I made that change to the procedure, was to increase the tuition reimbursement amount to from $100 to $150. You've probably been monitoring tuition conversations across, certainly at UW and then across the region, and most of the universities are raising their tuition. So we've actually accounted for and put additional funds in the budget for tuition reimbursement and have increased that from $100 to $150. The FMLA series, no changes there. Leave of absence series, no changes there. Down to employee grievance. One of the things that came up just as a question for clarification was to make it clear that the employee grievance procedure, this is on page 9 at 6.8p, it does not cover claims or allegations of discrimination or sexual misconduct, and we reference them appropriately to the 6.2 and 6.3 series there. 6.9, reduction in force, adds a little bit more clarifying language regarding financial emergencies, stating that it's based on withdrawal or anticipated withdrawal of funding. Like that. On page 10, if you go to policy 6.10, on conduct and discipline, no changes there. But when you get to the procedure, the 6.10p, there's changes there, and predominantly what we did as we went through a final review is notice that there was duplicative and at times even yet some language at odds between what was in the definition of misconduct and what was later stated within the procedure. And so what I did there, based again on some legal advice, is remove the stuff out of procedure and just make the definition more robust, and then simply refer in the procedure to the statements of misconduct, if you will, just to make it cleaner and easier to navigate. We also added underneath the appeal process, again based on feedback that we received from legal counsel, to actually denote the person at each level of the appeal. So, when people see level 1, they know what we're talking about. Level 2, they know what we're talking about in terms of the person for the action. Grammatical and clarifying languages. So I went through that quickly. I'm happy to answer any questions. The majority of these were grammatical, were formatting things, a few clarifying pieces here and there, and then, as I say, the aligning the definition of at will are really the major changes before you. So those are the procedures, Madam Chair, that you may have for procedures. As I say, those are in my domain, and they stand ready to be implemented based on your action tonight. And then you also have a section about your policies for you to go to. You will likely want to have conversation about that. You may want to take public comment on the policies before you as well, and certainly would encourage you to do that. But happy to answer any questions or defer the conversation to you.
Trustee Kelty?
Madam Chair, I'd like to ask Joe about the reduction in force. It looks like it's the procedures backing up the reduction in force policy.
What page and number, please?
This is page 9.
Thank you.
And it's the edit at the bottom of the page where they've added language to state the financial amount. A reduction in force, there was some contention at the time that reduction in force had been voted upon by the board, but there was in fact no emergency at the time. It had been done just because the governor had asked for contingency plans on what would happen if we reduced the budget by, I don't remember what it was at the time, maybe 5% or 8% or 10%. And so I'm wondering if this financial emergency does not have to be based on what do we mean by anticipated? Would the governor be asking for some budget contingency plans? Would that be sufficient?
Madam Chair, Trustee Kilty, that's actually an excellent question, especially coming off of the last biennia's mid-biennia cuts by the legislature. And yes, the budget process, as you all know, is an extremely extenuated process. And so we are oftentimes modeling and looking at potential funding or decreases in funding many months in advance to the enaction of an actual budget. And one of the things that we all recognize here at the college and in higher education is the vast majority of our resources are tied up in personnel. Between salary and benefits, I would say that it's probably pushing 80% of our budget is personnel and benefits. Those are not easy processes to move through to reduce personnel expenditures. And so we have to oftentimes start modeling and start actually acting based on what we anticipate to be able to actually realize them. And so that was clear to us as we went into this, this last round of budget reductions, and I imagine into the future, if we were to see those again, we would have to plan and possibly act before we actually had the final say of the legislature in funding. This language makes it clear that is an emergency for us to respond to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Schaefer. Any other questions? If not, we will move on to B, which is the second and final reading of the Human Resources. At this time, I think we will take public comment, but I would like to know how many people in the audience would like to come to the podium to speak. Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
8.
8. Okay, so 5 minutes.
9.
I think what we'll do, 9? Let me look. 9. I got you, I think. Okay, 9. I think what we'll do here is we will allow each speaker to speak for 5 minutes or less in lieu of the time constraint that we might have. So I counted 9. I'm sorry?
Madam Chair?
I can't hear
Madam
you.
Chair?
Yes, please, Ed.
I'd like to go back to Trustee Kilty's question there, and I may have missed something there, but if I could, I would like to hear what, as short of verbiage as possible, what then would constitute an anticipated reduction in force? What would cause us then to go do that if we don't have, from the standpoint of the anticipated, that word, if I could get a little clarity on that?
Madam Chair, Trustee Mosier, can you hear me okay, Ed?
Yes.
Okay, good. So as we go through the budget process with both the commission and ultimately the Joint Appropriations Committee, as well as the governor's recommendations, and we go into a legislative session, if we are to see legislation or say a supplemental budget in a general session starting to move in the direction of reductions in terms of the appropriations to the community colleges, recognizing that that fiscal year will always happen and start in July 1. But if we're seeing that move through the legislature, we may have to start modeling and start doing notifications and actions of reduction in force to accommodate what we perceive to be a withdrawal or with a reduction in funding. And just because of the timelines for notifications and doing those types of things associated with the reduction in force, you could have to actually act in February or in March during a legislative year based on the anticipation of budget reductions, and then actually make those determinations prior to the legislature ultimately submitting a supplemental budget or a budget to the governor, and then before that fiscal year starts. And so I think those actions and the direction of our elected officials who ultimately will determine allocations to the Community College Commission and then subsequently to us would determine those types of anticipated financial emergencies.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
add something to that. I think it's important for people to note that in this policy, the Board of Trustees needs to declare a financial emergency based on the withdrawal of funds or the anticipated withdrawal of funds. So this isn't something that just Joe is going to hear about in his office and say, I declare a financial emergency. This is something that we as a board are going to hear testimony on and that we as a board will have to decide. So when the time is right for that question to come to us, we will have adequate time and opportunity to drill Joe on why he believes that there should be a financial, and then we get the final decision.
Thank you, Brenda. Very clarifying. Ed, are you okay with that now?
Yes, I appreciate bringing out, that was where I was headed, was trying to make sure that we understood that the financial crisis that we might be looking at, the board would have to do that based on evidence that we presented, anticipated or real.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Trustee Mosier, that's why you will see that language in your policy that specifically states the Board of Trustees declaring a financial emergency based upon the withdrawal of funds or anticipated withdrawal.
Excellent. So if there are no, do you have more questions, Ed?
Not at the moment, thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions, we will move on to the second and final reading of the Human Resources Policy. I believe we should start on this side of the room and work back and around from the back forward for those 9 folks who want to come to the podium to speak. So, Rob, I believe you are first.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Rob Van Cleve, so Ed knows who I'm at over the phone. I'm here representing Faculty Senate once again. We met last Friday and unanimously voted once more to support staff in what they have asked for as far as the removal of the at-will status for classified staff after a reasonable probation. I would also like to point out that when you talk about we and we talk about Joe, 10 years from now or 15 years from now, we're talking about a completely different board, a completely different president, and we really need to put policies and procedures in place that are beneficial to both the institution and to the employees and to the community. And I would again urge you to take at least the employee classification status and the classifications out of procedure and put them back into policy. Well, they weren't ever in policy, but put those into policy as well as perhaps the gist of the disciplinary policy. I just think board needs to be in charge of that. I think they need to hold on to that piece. Everything that's been said has been said. Everything that's been done has been done. The administration, once again, has been, I'll let you know, has been very open to feedback, has been very receptive to that, and congenial in how these procedures and policies have been presented. You know, albeit the pace and the volume is a little bit overwhelming at first, and still is. But now we're at the end of the road. Now it's in your court. Now it is up to you. And I doubt there is anything I can do or say that's going to change Joe's mind or the rest of the administration. You know, I would hope that you would take the comments that I have given you and that staff has given you and the public has given you over the course of these several months to heart. And
Thank you, Rob. Jeff.
You would start on this side of the room. I couldn't have said it better myself. I agree with everything that Rob just said. You know, we've been questioning sort of, I don't know if you've been questioning, but certainly we have been questioning what belongs in policy and what belongs in procedure.
I can't talk.
Do you need me to speak up?
Ed, tell us what's going on, please.
I just wanted to check at this point with microphone.
Rob has is at the microphone.
I'm back now, Ed, if you have a question.
Yes, I was just looking for clarification when you said you're talking about putting the 4 classes of employees, you want those within policy 1.1, is that correct?
6.1.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that's true.
And did you have any other specific clarification or comments that have come up for your group regarding the in this case faculty?
No. No, we're happy with the classification and description of faculty in 6.1.1P, or whatever that is.
Okay, thank you. That was the question I had. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rob. Jeff is back.
All right, and so really, you know, it's up to you what's in policy and what's in procedure. Since this came out in the newspaper, I've talked to quite a few people in the community about this, and obviously it's a hot topic. And I haven't found one community member who thinks that due process should be taken away from any employee. They feel like, obviously you're elected to represent and to, protect the interests of the community. So, I really, really would encourage you to ask that the due process be put back in, actually in the policy. And then we really look at some of these policies like reduction in force and employee grievance and conduct and discipline, and make sure that there's enough protection to make sure that when Joe's gone and all of you are gone, that people don't get abused by future administration. So that's all I have.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I believe we're moving to the other side now. Mr. Hacker, please, you are next.
Giving a lawyer a 5-minute timeline.
It's going to be tough, isn't it?
It's like giving a dying man in the desert a bottle of water just out of reach. It seems so difficult to achieve. For Board Member Mosier, my name is Greg Hacker. I'm again on behalf of the LCCEA and the Wyoming Education Association. There are a couple of points that I would like to make is that by the adoption of the policies that are before you at this reading, combined with action on the rule that should take place at the next agenda item, the board will have enabled this drastic conversion of employees to at-will status. While it's the president's own procedure that's going to take care of that for you because you've delegated that to him, the board has culpability here for this action because you can stop it. You can require that it be changed. You can require that these definitions be created and put into policy. They're in policy now. Rules of form of policy. They're encoded now. You're going to take them away if you move forward. I won't bore you again with my comments on at-will employment other than to say I've never yet heard, especially publicly expressed, a compelling reason why you need at-will employment for these employees. And you have heard numerous reasons why it's not a good thing to do. You've heard substantial support for a probationary period of time where a person's at will then becomes not probationary anymore, which would make you consistent with the community colleges in the state, which was the vast majority of them, which would make you consistent with the public employers in this area that you compete with for employees. If you make these changes, you are going to become the outlier, the negative outlier in terms of employment. I would add also that the lack of action I'm not familiar with your policy creation and so forth, but despite the fact that you've had substantial public support for this issue, and I heard board members not vote, but express their interest and concerns about it, to somebody who sits on the outside, it appears that nothing has been done. To me, it seems like a game of chicken. The president who's not going to budge on this issue, and the board who has probably a variety of issues and concerns and constituencies they're dealing with. But this is the moment where the board's action is going to open up the floodgates of drastic changes. I don't have time to go through it, but you have serious problems in your procedures. And the whole goal of this process, to radically overhaul everything all at once, was to fix all of the problems. I can tell you as an experienced trial attorney, as someone who's experienced in employment law, your new procedures are going to create more work for me and other attorneys in this area than your other ones have in the last 20 years combined, probably. They're very problematic. They are not ready for prime time, and I frankly don't understand the rush that there has been to push these through. I would also add, and I wouldn't be doing the board, I would be doing the board a disservice if I didn't mention this, that the procedures that the president has already signed, as of this sometime today, because the signed copies in my agenda packet I downloaded, that are ready to go, are not going to be legally valid. They were not made in compliance with the college procedures and policies. There have been, and I've addressed this previously, I would be doing the board a disservice if I didn't tell you that I may be compelled, if I have a legal issue that addresses one of these procedures, to take the position that those procedures are invalid. And you are going to be left in a bigger legal mess than if you had never made a single change to any of these. This is the time where I would urge the board to go back, slow down, fix these issues and iron them out. And while the board is addressing what goes in policy and what shouldn't be put in procedure, some of the other issues with these things, procedures can be ironed out. I don't, quite frankly, understand the rush. I'm actively involved with legal issues at your college, and I've not seen the problems that have been purported to exist. Yeah, there are some things that are improvements in this, and I appreciate the willingness of the college to listen and make changes. I've seen a lot of good changes occur, but we are at some big stumbling blocks right now, and I would ask the board to think about its actions carefully and to direct the Human Resources Department, the legal counsel, whoever it is that writes your policies, to go back and make these fixes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hacker. Do we have rebuttal?
Madam Chair?
None. Okay.
Madam Chair, could
Yes, Trustee Little.
if we have questions, should we ask them now or wait till after public comments?
Let's wait until after public comment.
All right,
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Just jot those down.
I have, thanks.
Next. And please say your name when you come to the podium. Thank you.
My name is Lizette Miller, and I'm an accounts payable technician at the college.
Okay.
I want to thank President Joe for letting us have our say on everything. I read all the forums on the Wingspan. I went to the forum that was held. I was not able to go to the college council meeting. Some of us had to work. And then I also came to the meeting when you guys were the board last time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't quite understand. It seems like to me that we're saying pretty loud want to be at will. So after that last meeting, I went back and I said, am I missing something? You know, guys, help me out here. Well, I talked to some of the people who've been here for a long time. I've talked to other people. And no, I'm not missing nothing. Their answer was, we're just tired of fighting it, you know? And I said, that's sad, you know? Because I think they have been fighting it. They've done what they're supposed to do. They've gone and talked to Amy. They've went to the forums, you know? I also went to the meeting that we had the other day that talked about communication and what our issues were. And it all boiled down to the same thing. And this is pretty blunt, and this is just for me, no one else. Don't ask me what I want if you're not going to listen to me. And that's how I feel at this point in time. And I know a lot of the rest of them do, but I cannot speak for them. I can only speak for myself.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Sure.
What is in your head is that if and when we pass these, that you will become at will? Is that what's in your head?
No, I understand that I'm a legacy,
Okay, all right.
but that's not, it still leads to other problems. If I want to switch positions, if I want to better myself, then I lose my legacy.
Okay.
And I'm not really afraid of that personally, but I know others are.
Okay.
And so that is a big detriment to their thinking. Why improve? You know? And so that's the way a lot of them are thinking.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. Thank you very much for hearing us. Leah Noonan, faculty, CIS. I've spoken, I think, at almost all of the meetings. I feel very strongly, again, I'm speaking for myself, for the staff. I've been staff a lot of years. I've been administration of quite a few years. So I've been on all sides of it, and now faculty since '97. But I feel very, very strongly about protecting those people who don't have a financial net to fall back on, whose jobs they depend on day to day to put food on the table, pay their rent. I had a student come to me, a non-traditional student, who said, we've been talking, the state of Wyoming, various governmental bodies in the area, such as city and county governments, they for the most part, do not have any at-will employees. Why does LCCC have to make this move? And I pose to you, change should only be driven by need. Also, so that was my primary thing. They deserve better. We, as a college, deserve better. We're competing with all of these companies, governmental bodies, for good employees. If we remove that safety net so that they all become at will, we lose the best. Why come here and work when you have no job security in any shape or form? On a small side issue, the 6.9P that was signed by Dr. Schaefer today, immediately above it on page 5 of 5, you had said in the reference table that the amount had been changed to $150 per credit hour. The form you signed says 100. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, for clarification, the one that is with your agenda materials that went out does still say 100. That change, as you'll see on your reference table, was made today.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, President Schaefer, Ed out there. Thank you very much for letting me speak tonight. First of all, I want to reiterate what my colleagues have said. I basically support what they've said. Just a little bit different perspective. I teach computer science and computer information systems here. But in my previous life, I've had several jobs where I was a supervisor and manager. First as an Army officer, and then as a state employee, basically managing IT projects and supervisors. So I have an understanding of how difficult it can be to manage people. That's why I'm really glad I don't manage anyone anymore, just me and my dogs and cats. But given that, I always thought that, yeah, it's harder, but that's why I get paid more, and that was just my job to do. So along with that, I kind of have a question as to why are we different? Okay, we are one of the largest employers, governmental employers in Laramie County. The state of Wyoming is another one. The city of Cheyenne, the county of Laramie, county obviously, the Bureau of Public Utilities, the school district number 1 and 2. Our current HR policies in terms of due process are in line with them. It is obviously not keeping them from managing their employees effectively. So why can't we do it? I don't have an answer to that question. We have an employee, we draw our employees from the same population. We don't do national searches for people except at the top level, so we can assume our middle level employees or the day-to-day contact are the same population. So I would like to pose that question. So what is different? Is it our HR policies? No, they're the same. And I ask you to think about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm Kathy Rogers. I'm a faculty member here at LCCC. We've heard this over and over again, the meetings we've had the past few months. But something I want to point out, see these cookies? This one, even after I ate it, it's still big as the plate. This is a cookie I got back behind there. This is a cookie for the common people back at the back. I'm comparing how, if you compare the cookies to how at-will employees are being served by these policies and procedures, here it is. Here it is. They're getting the little cookies. And they're not as fresh as the big cookies back here.
I guess what I'd like to say is please slow down on this process. There's no rush. Let's look at this and make sure we do it right. Ed Mosier had made the statement meeting or so ago that the policies were not really, as proposed, in good order. Why can't we get those in good order to begin with and then work through the procedure? We just have spent so much time going over and over and over these. So please, can we slow down this process to make sure it's done right? What we don't want in the future for this institution, even though all of us in this room are legacy employees, we won't be here forever, and do we want our future colleagues to be all at will? I just get a sense that I'm being bought off. Well, you're a legacy employee, you don't have to worry about this. I do worry about it. I worry about it very much, and I really hope that you don't pass these policies and procedures as written, and that we make sure we do it correctly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Amy Ellman, Staff Senate President. She had stole my cookie demonstration, but I would all like you to please very much pay attention to that. There is a really big difference in those cookies, much smaller, much bigger. That is a huge symbol of how we're feeling as staff. It represents so many things, not just cookies. There are rights, there are responsibilities, there are how we feel here at the college. Please take that to heart. I am also very frustrated to hear that Dr. Schaefer had signed those procedures. I had presented different options, I had presented other colleges, I'd done a lot of research on these, and yet they're still the same. So we're still frustrated, and we still feel like the small cookie. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
I have 8. The 9th person is Arun, I believe. Dr. Goyal.
Hello, Arun is fine.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Arun Goyal. I am Dean of Special Projects, and I believe, Don, you will recognize me now. Trustee Erickson, you will recognize me who I am.
Yes, I
Last time
understand
you
who
were
you are.
not.
Thank you.
I have just only a couple of comments to make and review, and I just learned that Joe has approved all the procedures, and I could not agree more than everybody said whatever. And the reason I have to agree with everybody because I was concerned about the policy themselves, because last time I mentioned, and I requested the board to please go back, read your own policies, revise them, and rewrite your own policies little better. So the college has a better guidance in terms of the policy. And then the college can work towards a better procedures. But again, as everybody can see, we are busy in writing the procedures. Why? I do not know. And as Kathy just a few minutes ago said, review the policies. Please be very careful. I will not be here, many of us will not be here. Down the road, many of our future colleagues will be here. Procedure will be impacted by how we have the policies in place. So please, please review policies. I'm not saying they are all bad, I'm not saying anything. A little revising them, little tweaking them will make a huge impact how our LTPC is going to be down the road, really looking into things. And I've really reviewed policies of about 12 different institutions. And those including the institution I picked up randomly, Valencia College in Florida and many others. And I just went through their policies and then I compared to us and where things are. So this is my encouragement to you, a simple request. Whichever peer colleges you want to pick them up, review them, you are the board members, and see where we are, what we want to see, where our LTCC, where our evolving people wants to see. And there's no rush into it. and then say, okay, this is where we want to be, and then work towards it. This is my suggestion. The second thing I will request to you, I had a couple of minor comments on these procedures. One will be on 6.1.1p, page number 5, in faculty, second paragraph. So this time, Madam Chair, I'll be very, very specific. I will be very, very specific. Page 5 of 8, 6.1.1p, second paragraph. The second line from the bottom, it reads, and are usually classified as exempt. I'm just trying to understand that usually word. Why usually? Can anyone, attorney, or explain that?
Dr. Arun, I'm still having trouble finding the passage.
Oh.
So once again, 6.1.
1p, page 5 of 8.
Please, Dr. Schaefer, please answer.
Madam Chair, members of the board, as you will find in many procedures and many things that they need to be clear enough so that you can implement them and do that, but also have the ability to recognize that special circumstances and unique circumstances happen at all the time. As our human resources executive director and staff, our legal counsel in this case have looked at it, there are circumstances where the type of work that may fall in an employee in a certain classification under the Fair Labor Standards Act may have to designate it differently. This provides us the flexibility, should we encounter that case, to be able to recognize that they may not. So it's simply a use of word to recognize that there are at times extenuating circumstances based on federal law and regulation that we have to comply with that allows us to still employ and hire the people we need to do the job.
Definition is a faculty definition. Faculty definition either in terms of the American Association of Professors or whatever you look at it, either you define faculty as a faculty or you can define certain portion of that faculty appointment in a certain way. But please do not compromise faculty, because then it comes to the Obama healthcare issue where we define every contact hour, every credit hour in this college, 3 clock hours. That puts us into 45, exempt status into 45 hours of their working. And that caused a very large number of...
Excuse me, Dr. Goyal, you are at 5 minutes.
Yes, but I'm just saying, I'm going to, because since Joe has explained that...
I worked that into your time, and you are about at 6.5 minutes.
No, but Joe has put it in, his time.
Took that into account. So could you please wrap it up now for us,
Okay,
please?
so I'll just give you the comment. The second will be, so it was just Kevin Kilty were looking to point and all those things anyway. Second comment will be page 2 of 3 of 6.1.4, job amendment, where you have included, unless there are extreme extenuating circumstances as determined in the sole discretion of the human resources. You don't want to give a sole power to anybody. That's very dangerous area.
Thank you very much for your
No,
time.
no.
No, you're over your time now. I am so sorry. Everybody else,
But how much time Kevin took the time waiting to find things in there?
I'm very sorry.
And-
Everyone else had 5 minutes or less.
Yes,
so-
but you guys try to find that stuff.
Excuse me. Your time is up. Thank you very much.
Then can I submit to you what it is? That you need to take when you want to read, or you want to just totally cut it off? Because these are dangerous areas that you are putting in.
We do understand, and everyone here abided by the 5-minute time, so.
Yes, I do understand, but you guys took the time inside.
Because
of
you
my
asked
time.
questions, and so I am
So I
very
asked the
sorry.
question, the reason I asked the question.
I do not want to argue with you, but your time is up. Thank you very much.
So you want to continue to have a dangerous area inserted in here by Joe, and you want to continue to, that's fine.
Thank you very much.
So, good enough for you. Down the road, all the illegal things can have it.
Next, we will have board discussion, and I do believe that Trustee Little had a question or comment.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I actually have several. So my initial one is the one that came up while somebody was talking. It was Greg, I'm sorry. Greg mentioned that we are not passing these policy board policy, and I wanted to have Tara and Deb clarify if that was or was not true.
Madam Chair, through you, Trustee Little, I have reviewed the policies and procedures, and let's take them a little bit separately. Your policies, there have been very, very minor changes to those since they first became in front of the board. So there have not been substantial changes in any fashion to your policies, and that's what this board would be acting on tonight. With regard to procedure, you can even look at the reference table that Dr. Schaefer has provided, and I've looked at that to look at what changes have been made to this. One, I think, first of all, it's reflective of the fact that the consultative process has worked, and that people have been heard, and changes have been made. In reviewing that, I do not believe substantial enough changes have been made to the procedures as a whole to constitute that process going back through the feedback process internally. So I do not agree with that statement unlawfully.
Thank you.
Just one moment.
Madam,
Dr. Schaefer would
Madam
like to
Chair,
speak.
Trustee Little, just to understand that the EA's attorney claimed that this has not followed the policy and procedure accurate. And in fact, if you'll permit me, Madam Chair, let me walk you through the process that we've gone through with this. These policies and procedures were first developed by HR and by legal counsel July of 2013 is when we started this process. The initial cabinet approval after meetings with you, the initial formal cabinet approval was on January 21st of 2014, at which time then we went out and posted the first consultative feedback period. Based on that feedback and conversation at that time, we made changes based on that feedback, looked at that, and as you'll denote, if you want to look at if there were any substantial changes based on that feedback, it was between the 22nd and what we ended up posting later on here in March. And we updated that, created this table as the first time. The table with those updates went to cabinet, and in fact, it went out to the entire campus for their. The second consultative feedback period on March 3rd, 2014, and actually went back and did that. Went for final cabinet approval on March 14th, College Council on March 17th, and then they came to me in my domain. So I just want to make sure that you have no question that we followed that procedure. And in fact, if the question about if we didn't follow the procedure should come up, it's the fact that we held 3 open forums. We held a retreat with you. We had initial meetings with the cabinet. We've had considerable conversations. So if we haven't followed it, it's because we've broadened it significantly to allow for feedback. This process has been going on for almost a year now.
Okay. Thank you. Carol, I have 2 more questions.
Sure,
you mind if I just
ahead.
go and then I'll be done? We have heard some testimony that there is some fear that if we make the new staff positions at will, that we will be lacking in competition and that nobody will want to apply for a job at LCCC. So I want to make sure that I understand and the folks in the room understand if in fact we pass these policies and procedures and we suddenly find, or after a certain amount of time, find that we have no job applicants, is it possible for us to go back and change our policy based on the fact that no one applies?
I'm sure should but not be set in stone. They should be reviewed consistently. They should be with the performance of the institution to meet your expectations, the communities, to do that. And if we find things that aren't working for the institution,